What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Time Out with Doc and Caveman. As always, you are here with Dr. Fantasy and the Fantasy Caveman. We are creeping up on All-Star Weekend, which is always a fun time of year. So we're going to have a little bit of All-Star chatter. We got some injuries and then some milestones to talk about as well. So, Caveman, I want to ask you first, though, how are you feeling about Doc Rivers so far?
Oh man, I mean, it's been a little rough. They won out of their four, one out of their five games so far that he's coached. I think it's gonna be a adjustment period. We gotta play the long game here. I don't think we. I don't. At least I didn't expect Doc Rivers to come in and bam, everything's right with this team and from day one. I mean,
So,
so
day two, then.
I mean,
So how long do you give it then? Because to me, I mean, he's there to bring an instant spark of energy because they could have just kept Adrian Griffin hanging around, and they were one of the top teams in the East. So to me, you make this move because you want results now. So how long do you give it? Does it not even matter until the playoffs if they mosey on in as the 7 seed? But as long as they, perform in the playoffs, that's fine, right?
I mean that's gonna be the true indicator of how well. I mean, it kind of the Bucks were, even no matter what, they were always gonna kind of know they're one of the teams that are gonna coast through the regular season anyways. Like, you saw their defense was atrocious this season. They were still 30-13 at the time they let Adrian Griffin go. So they were always gonna like kind of coast through the season. They're gonna probably end up being a second or third seed. Uh, Maybe who knows, but they're gonna be a top three seed. It's gonna be about how they perform in the playoffs, especially, and we'll talk about the major injury to a top contender in the East. We'll talk about that him in a bit, but the East now, you know, especially now with that, it's kind of opens things up a little bit in my opinion. So they might have one less team to concern themselves with for now. So I think they'll be fine. The playoffs is what I'm really looking at, because we know they're gonna be there. They're gonna be a contending team, but we've seen it, and that's been the problem with the Bucks recently in the playoffs. Is come crunch time, how are these players going to perform? And that's how Doc Rivers is going to be judged, because, like we said, he doesn't have a great track record in the clutch moments as a coach. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think the solution to all of this is just skip the entire regular season and hop right into the playoffs. The NBA should just choose teams at random at the beginning of the year that advance to the playoffs, because the regular season doesn't matter anymore, I guess. But it is interesting that the Eastern Conference is starting to heat up now. I guess those teams that were aggressive making trade moves are now fighting for the 3 seed. And the Cavaliers and the Knicks have both been on fire. The Cavaliers on a 5-game winning streak, 9-1 in their last 10. The Knicks were coming off a 9-game winning streak, just lost one the other night. So both of those teams very hot right now. It seems at the right time. So we'll see. I think it's going to be competitive up top. The Cavs are only half a game back from the Bucks right now, so they continue to surge, which is cool to see that team start to click together. But let's stay in the Eastern Conference. I had it later on the agenda, but you already mentioned some of the big injuries, so let's talk about it then. We have Joel Embiid having a meniscus knee injury. It's going to keep him out a minimum of 1 to 2 months, but it depends on how he heals. And knowing Joel Embiid, that means he's out for the season. Let's just be real here. It's probably going to be challenging for him to come back soon. So we'll see. If anything, he's going to come back right before the playoffs. that's the kind of team they're going to have to stay afloat until then, which I think they can stay in the playoff chase without Joel Embiid. They might have to win through the play-in tournament, but they still have a legitimate shot. So do you see, outside of the Bucks and the Celtics now, who do you think's the team that's most likely to step up for that 3 seed? Do you think this impacts who's going to come out of the East? What do you think about this?
First off, this kind of you hit it with it, kind of hit it with this injury. I think I don't even if Embiid comes back at this point, like some point right before the season ends or the playoff, I think it kind of takes the Sixers out of it, like completely. Because they say right now they're saying 1 to 2 months, but that's not even a definitive timetable. They're just trying to put a timeline on it for the sake of putting the timeline on it. We really don't know, and like you said, with Embiid's history, you got to take any timeline with an Embiid injury with a grain of salt. I mean, they still got hoopers on that squad. They still got Tyrese Maxey. They still got Tobias Harris.
Mo Bamba.
I know Andre Drummond is a name floating around for them to possibly go and get in the wake of this Embiid injury, which we haven't really talked about the Bulls or Andre Drummond, but he's kind of having a solid, I don't know if you'd call it resurgence, but he's having quite a solid season for the Bulls. So if he's made available, that might help fill a little bit of the center void in Philly. But as far as who's going to step up and kind of take that third spot behind Boston and Milwaukee, I think it's a couple teams. You got Indiana, with the Siakam deal. You got the Knicks with OG. I mean, I think right now I'd probably go the Knicks if I had to pick one team. I'm just not. I'm just not there with Cleveland. I know they're kind of riding a hot streak, but we haven't really talked about them that much when we've been discussing who can be in the 4 or the 6. We haven't really been talking about Cleveland that much, and maybe we're disrespecting Cleveland a bit, but I'm just not. They got a younger squad yet. And we'll talk about Donovan Mitchell shortly, but yeah, I'm not really feeling Cleveland. The Knicks, like I said, I'd love the OG trade for him. Like I've said multiple occasions, he's a perfect Tom Thibodeau player. And the Knicks are always gonna be a tough out in the playoffs. Like, do you really think they're gonna a serious threat? No, but whoever they go up against, they're gonna give them a brutal 6, possibly 7 game series that could wear that team down to the point where it could really affect the other team going into future rounds. So, I mean, I personally like the Knicks to emerge as the 3rd seed.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think they're a pretty well-rounded team. I think I actually favor the Cavaliers, and I think that they're a very, very dangerous team because they have youth, but I mean, it's a healthy mix if we're being honest about it. And they kind of have all of the check boxes. They have a superstar player. I don't think the Knicks have a superstar player. I mean, I don't think Julius Randle's a superstar. You can call him a star, but there's just Donovan Mitchell's on the next tier above, I personally would say. And then you have Darius Garland in the backcourt with him. You have shooting with Strus, who's been amazing this year. Okoro coming off the bench. Karis LeVert averaging almost 16 points coming off the bench. And then defensively, I think they're super underrated. Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are a force to be reckoned with defensively in the front court. So when you mix it all together, I mean, Donovan Mitchell's a good defender too. They have some depth coming off the bench that's a mix of youth and some experience. I think they check a lot of the boxes. Is this the type of team that's going to win the NBA championship this year? No, but if they continue to make strides like this, I mean, I think they could contend in the East and make it to the championship next season. I don't think there's any reason they couldn't, especially Evan Mobley just keeps getting better and better. So if you pair him along with Garland and Mitchell and he keeps making strides, I don't think there's any reason they can't. I think the Knicks are a little less just on paper. When you look at their team on paper, maybe it's a little less exciting. I mean, I guess they do have Jalen Brunson, who's probably putting himself in the superstar category now, though. But I guess when you really think about it, they are pretty similarly built teams, just with Randall and Jalen Brunson versus Mitchell and Mobley, and so there's a lot of parallels between the two of them.
Yeah.
But I just think that the way that the
Randall
Cavs
is
are
hurt right now. So
yeah, that's true as well. But yeah, I like the way that I always believe in momentum. I think it's a little early to start talking about playoff momentum because we got to go another whole half of a season. But I like the way the Cavs are playing, and I don't think there's any reason that they can't make a nice little run. I don't know if competing with Boston is necessarily in the cards this year, but it would be a good series, I think. I don't think they would be blown out by any stretch of the imagination. So the other injury that we have this week is Zach Lavine, who is going to be out for the season. It's 4 to 6 months recovery for him. Not that the Bulls were making much noise. They sit as the 9 seed right now, so they are in that play-in tournament. They probably are going to stay there even without Zach Lavine, and Lavine hasn't been playing his best this season anyway. So, when you look at teams on the outside in the East, I can't really see like the Raptors or the Nets or the Hornets or any of those teams really taking the Bulls over. I would dare say that the top 10 teams in the Eastern Conference are fairly locked. I don't know personally if it'll change. And I know the Nets are only sitting a game and a half out, but I would just heavily personally favor the Hawks to take that over. Just way more talent there. So, any thoughts about this Lavine injury? I don't think it's as relevant to the entire scope of the league as the Embiid injury, but
no, I mean the Bulls were probably always destined, even with a healthy Lavine or a healthy squad, were probably always destined to be a play-in team. But I don't know if I'm looking at you brought up the standings. If I'm looking at the landscape of things, I mean, could this free up a team like the Toronto Raptors, who I know they just traded Siakam, but I mean, they got quickly and they got RJ Barrett there. I mean, if you're talking about taking the Bulls drop, they could, you talk about maybe the Raptors could sneak in to a play-in spot. I do like RJ and quickly there, so I think they're maybe a team to look out for if the Bulls slip a bit. But like you said, it doesn't really matter because the Bulls probably aren't going to be worse, if at all worse, and it kind of makes it seem like Lavine's not a good player, which I don't believe to be the case. I still think he is a good player in this league. I think he's just been hurt a lot recently, and he also, I mean, this probably puts it to bed, but he was their most heavily rumored player to be on the move this at the deadline anyways, so there's a good chance that come after the deadline he wasn't going to be a part of the team anyways. So I mean, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, probably doesn't change a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a reality there. So case closed on Zach Lavine. Probably unfortunate for the Bulls. The return that they're going to get isn't going to be as significant. A, with the injury, and just B, the way he's been playing. He's looked pretty bad this season. He's averaging his least amount of points in like 6 years in his career. So it's been quite the down year for him. But let's move over to some other news with a probably future Hall of Famer, Russell Westbrook. I don't really love saying that
Probably
out loud.
okay.
I just
You
don't
have
like
to get
Russell
that dig
Westbrook,
in.
okay? Yeah. But he reached the 25,000 point mark this week. I don't know if it's as impressive because it was against the Pistons, but that's okay. He still did it, and he's accomplished quite a bit in his career. So I'm assuming this is just a shout out to your boy here.
Yeah. I mean, the 25th player to reach 25,000 points is kind of cool number there. But I mean, I think this is we haven't, and we've been doing this we've been doing this revival to our podcast for well a month now, and we have Russell Westbrook's name hasn't been brought up that much.
I talked
I don't
about him
know
one time.
but I mean, this just goes the show. I mean, he's been in this league for a long time, doing uh having great individual statistical seasons. And just this season, Russell Westbrook's gonna be if the Clippers win in the playoffs, and if the Clippers are in the title picture, like if they're in the Western Conference Finals or they come out of the West, Russell Westbrook's decision to come off the bench, because reports are that it was him that went to Tyronn Lue and said that I want to come off the bench for this team. If the Clippers make it to their goals, it's going to be because of Russell Westbrook and his willingness to come off the bench at this point in his career. Because they didn't. I don't think the Clippers had it in their cards for Russell Westbrook to come off the bench. I think they were going to kind of die on this ship of trying to get Westbrook and Harden and Paul George and Kawhi to share one basketball at the same time, and hasn't really wasn't really working. And you gotta think since Westbrook's come off the bench, they are a league best 24-5 since Westbrook's coming off the bench. And Tyronn Lue said there's been several games where he feels Russell Westbrook's energy and just off the bench is kind of helped them win several games during this stretch. So it's just I mean, I just wanted to bring this up to just show some praise to Russell Westbrook because he's cool.
The NBA's all-time leader in triple doubles. So he'll always have, well, not always. Jokic might have something to say about that at some point. He's still 68 behind him though, which is kind of insane to think about. Yeah, I mean, I brought him up a few weeks ago actually when we talked about our finals predictions because I picked the Clippers to win it all. And one of the reasons was I like the way that James Harden and Russell Westbrook have just settled in to different roles where they don't have to be the main core of a championship team. They're both at the points in their career where they've accepted their roles and understand that their roles are still really important to win a championship. It doesn't just because they're not the guy doesn't mean they're not important. I could almost argue that those two are the key to winning the entire championship. Kawhi and Paul George have not got it done together thus far, and I know they've been injured and not always playing together, but that's just the reality. They haven't had as strong of a third and fourth option as James Harden and Russell Westbrook during the Paul George Kawhi era. So I think good on them because I've said many times that earlier in their career they we're not playing like championship level players. And I believe that. And sometimes I think guys that are no longer superstars and get later in their careers struggle to assume those roles. There's a little bit of an ego. You always want to be the guy on your team, but both of them have settled in really nicely, and I think it could be a reason why the Clippers win a championship. So good on them, and congratulations to Russ.
I still feel Russell Westbrook should have won a title with OKC. They should have beat
right?
They should have beat Golden State, but
But here we are. So that's Russell Westbrook. Let's go next to this 3-point contest that you want to talk about. And then we're going to end it with the All-Star snubs, which we'll talk about. And that should wrap things up for the most part. So we have Steph Curry challenging NBA player Sabrina Ionescu, which I believe I said that slightly wrong. I practiced and looked it up on YouTube ahead of time because I don't know why I would know how to say her name. No offense. I'm not a big WNBA fan, but I believe it's Ionescu. Sabrina Ionescu. That's what we're going with. So her and Steph Curry during All-Star Weekend are going to have a 3-point contest. Caveman, what did you want to say about this?
Oh boy. First off, I'm a little discouraged to find out that Steph will be using an NBA ball with an NBA 3-point line, and Sabrina will be using a WNBA ball and a WNBA 3-point line. I don't know if this is how this is gonna come off, but I think they should be on a level playing field. They should be both using the same, but that's just maybe that's not right. Means I don't know. But anyways,
you're just a man. You can't say that. You're a man.
But like, I mean maybe that's a conversation for another day or another time. What? But I mean, I'm excited to see this because it's something different,
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fun. Steph Curry really seems to want that record. I believe last season, if I'm reading this correctly, Sabrina, I'm not gonna try to pronounce that last name. She apparently scored 37 points during the WNBA's 3-point contest during All-Star Weekend last season, and Steph said he wants that record. So I mean, at this point, how can you bet against Steph Curry in a 3-point contest?
I'm going to.
Like, I mean,
is this going to hurt his legacy when he loses? He's not going to be known as the same shooter anymore, right? You can't call him the greatest of all time.
I mean, joke, but that actually might be kind of valid if he loses if he loses this 3-point contest, when he's supposed to be the greatest 3-point shooter ever. So, but I mean, it's fun. It's gonna be fun, just something different. And I mean, even Kevin Durant initially said he picked Steph Curry to win, but Steph Curry was all cynical, saying that he thought Kevin Durant was going to pick Sabrina, so Kevin Durant changed his pick. So now Kevin Durant's going with Sabrina to win. So, I mean, it's just fun. It's just just adds to the element because it seems like in general the All-Star Weekend and the All-Star Game specifically, they're gonna try to get to more focus on the game itself. So it's nice to have this little extra, part of the festivities that, a lot of people are clamoring for. So, I mean, I guess something's different and fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is cool. And I mean, I do think it would be kind of interesting if he ended up losing. The NBA's there's only 2 players ever to average over 40% behind the 3-point line and 90% from the free throw line. Steph Curry and Mark Price. Fun trivia fact there. But yeah, so it would be kind of interesting. But let's give her a little bit of a shout out. Let's go through in case you don't know who she is. She was the number 1 overall pick in the WNBA in 2020. She's averaging 17 points this year, and she is averaging 15.7 for her career. This is her 4th year in the NBA. Her career 3-point percentage, not quite what Steph Curry's is at 37.7%, but still very impressive, and almost 91% from the free throw line in her career. 3-point percentage this year, though, career high at 44.8%, which is just kind of wild on 8 attempts per game. So, yeah, she's having herself a nice season. She came from Oregon, number 1 pick in 2020. So there's a shout out to Sabrina Ionescu. And if I pronounce
you didn't know any of this before researching for this episode.
I didn't. So you know what? I'm just trying to pass on that knowledge to everybody because we're spreading the love to everybody. Alrighty, so that's Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry. I agree. I mean, I mentioned it before, but I liked when they did that one-on-one tournament to add just kind of interesting elements to it, which it is interesting because they're trying to focus more on the All-Star game, but at the same time, they're adding something like this. So I don't know. You need a good mix of all the above. But anyway, speaking of the All-Star game, let's talk about All-Star snubs. They released the All-Star rosters this week. You have people all over Twitter and social media clamoring that certain players should be in, certain players should be out. So based on what's come out recently, who do you think should be in? Who do you think should be out?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. First of all, it'll be very interesting to see who Adam Silver, who obviously is in charge of picking any replacements and whatnot, because you're gonna obviously end up replacing Joel Embiid's spot, and they're gonna end up replacing most likely Julius Randle's gonna miss the All-Star game as well. So you're gonna end up there's gonna be at least 2 replacements in the Eastern Conference. If I'm going by conference, I'm a little. I mean, you don't like this guy, but just based on, how the game is played, I'm very surprised to see Trae Young not picked among the reserves. I mean, I know you don't like him as a player. I don't know if it's because he has weird facial hair or whatnot, but this season he's averaging 27, 11, 3, steal and a half. Among the players not selected, highest scoring average, second in assists through the season. League leading 25 games with 20 points and 10 assists. And the only player to dish out 450 assists this season. So, I mean, how can you not talk about All-Stars when you just point out those numbers and the fact that wasn't among the selection. So I think in the Eastern Conference, I think that's probably the biggest snub. I mean,
he'll probably make it with those injuries, though, I'd imagine, right?
But I don't know, because those are both front court players. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that matter?
I don't think that it does.
With Adam Silver, does he have to select a front court player? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's how that works or not. But I know. I'm sorry. I don't know if this is gonna make me sound like a hater. Derek White, no. I'm sorry, no.
You are a hater.
Does not. I mean, he's been an excellent role player for the Celtics this season. He's done exactly what they needed him to. But I just don't think he's an all-star. No, West, I'm sorry. The biggest snub to me overall, I mean, it has to be De'Aaron Fox. I mean, how is this guy how did no Kings players even made the All-Star team?
Yeah.
Weird. And I know Sabonis deserves it too, but I mean, you got to look at the Kings are 5th place in the Western Conference. I mean, he's having a career. Fox is having a career year. He's shooting a career high 38% from 3-point line. He's already surpassed his career high in 3-pointers made. I mean, and they're 27-19. He's a big reason why. 27 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals. I mean, and the problem is the West doesn't really have any injuries as of now. So unless there's an injury, he's not going to make it, which I think is a crime and probably the biggest. I mean, there's snubs every year, so obviously there's going to be a guy like this every time. But I think this year, I think Fox is that guy. To me, he has to be the biggest snub of the All-Star.
So if you're gonna put him in, who would you take out? Is there anybody you're like, I don't know, I'd put De'Aaron Fox in over him? I mean, that's the tough part for me. You look at the rosters and you're like,
you do got a point there. I mean, if you're looking at that's
Kawhi,
tough.
Paul George, I mean,
that is the other part of it. Like looking at this, looks like the list of the Western reserves. You got Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Anthony Edwards. I mean, what's Devin Booker been doing? That's what I'm thinking.
he's got
is he having a better season? Do you think Devin Booker is having a better season than De'Aaron Fox?
28 points, 7 assists, almost 5 rebounds. So statistically a little better than De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
I mean, on paper you could say De'Aaron Fox's numbers are better than Anthony Edwards, but Anthony Edwards is on, one of the star players of the best team in the league right now. So, well, not the best, but one of the best teams in the league. So it's hard to argue against him. I agree that De'Aaron Fox should be an all-star, but I don't know who you take out, honestly. I have absolutely no idea. I think it's semi-amusing that Doc Rivers gets to coach the Eastern Conference. He just started and he's going to be the head coach for them. And I don't know if you saw this, but he's giving his bonus money to Adrian Griffin that he gets for being the all-star coach, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, the Kings are just one of those teams that are very unexciting. It's just they're in 5th place in a very crowded Western Conference. We don't ever talk about them. The media never talks about them, and they're just out there doing their thing, and they continue to win. I think this is an interesting statistic on Sabonis. So Sabonis right now is averaging 19.9 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists. So really 20, 13, 8 pretty much. But he's only one of 4 players ever to average at the halfway mark over 12 rebounds, 8 assists, and 18 points. The other 3 players are Nikola Jokic,
Russell Westbrook,
no, Oscar Robertson, and Wilt Chamberlain, and now Sabonis. So he is in quite elite company there. So when you read that, I don't know. I struggle to. But once again, it's a question of who does he replace? Do you replace Anthony Davis? Do you replace, me personally, I would probably replace Paul George or Kawhi with Sabonis. And Sabonis kind of plays like that 4-ish, 5-ish role. So, I mean, he's not really a modern center. I think he was on the ballot as, it's a front court guy. That's the way that they list it now. So I think that he could have replaced Paul George or Kawhi. De'Aaron Fox, if you're going guard for guard, I think that he probably shouldn't miss, as crazy as that is. But Sabonis, to me, when you look at the other front court guys, I'd probably put him ahead of both of the Clippers guys there. So I think that's a big snub there. I think it'll be interesting to see who replaces the 2 guys in the Eastern Conference. It's probably going to be Trae Young as one of them. I was reading a report that because the East does kind of need some big men with those injuries. They really have. I mean, they have Giannis, but beyond that, they have Bam coming off the bench, and then really a bunch of guards in Banchero. So
I'm assuming Miles Turner
yeah, that's what
has a
I
good
read was
chance of
Miles
making it.
Turner. I mean, Miles Turner probably doesn't deserve to be an all-star necessarily, but they need another. I mean, I guess when you're looking at the
I
big
mean,
men
he's
in the
not
Eastern
having a
Conference,
bad season.
it's just very underwhelming. You're gonna look at probably Fox or one of Sabonis missing it, and this is one of the downsides of the Eastern and Western Conference format. Again, I think because those two guys, if we were in the old format, would probably make it. That's just the reality. So you're seeing one of the potential downsides here when you're limiting it to, well, we only have got to pick guys from the Eastern or Western Conference. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know that seems like the players, just based on what's been said in the media, are potentially taking it a little more seriously, which I personally hope so. Because to me, that's always been the allure of it all. Is I don't want to see a glorified dunk contest in the middle of the All-Star game. Like you have the best players in the world. If they're putting their best against the other players' best, that's a fun game to watch.
I mean, yeah, you can have that competitiveness while at the same time, not. You don't need all the players going out playing like it's Game 7 of the NBA Finals or anything.
No, I want
You
that.
don't need that level of intensity, but you can find that medium where it feels like an actual game.
I want $1 million. I told you, to each player who's on the winning side.
That will kind of incentivize them like the in-season tournament does. That might get, Do they get? I'm sure they get some kind of I'm not sure how that does. Does the winning team each player get compensation?
Yeah, I think a lot of times I know for some guys they have it written in their contract. So like Sabonis, I was reading, had a $1.3 million bonus if he made the All-Star game. So I mean,
Damn,
yeah, I think
that's
in
bad.
general though it's like they split like $1 million between all of them. It's like a really super low amount unless it's written in their contract from the team. So
Yeah, I mean, you didn't. I'm surprised you didn't bring up your. I know I was going through a list, and I know some people were saying your boy Sangoon might have.
my boy Sangoon. Yeah, it's one of those cases too. I mean, he's been really good in the Rockets. We mentioned him a few weeks ago. Have been super under the radar, playing really well. So well, they've been on a skid recently. As I sit here and say that they fell out of the top 10 spots in the West, but the West is super competitive. So not the end of the world. But yeah, that would have been cool. There were some people clamoring for Wemby to make it too. And I mean, on paper, his numbers have been solid, but it would have been one of those things where you just want to see him for who he is because he'd bring international attention to the game if he played in it. So I mean, he's not gonna make it, but there's been some people that said it would be good for the NBA, which probably isn't a lie.
But I'm not thinking. I'm looking at Sangoon's stats here, man. I mean, 22, 9, and 5 to go with.
I know.
Like, I mean, to his credit, he has a very good chance of winning Most Improved Player. I think he has a very strong case, but
Still only
yeah,
21, by the way. I mean, it's
crazy.
all right. Anything else on your list? That's all I had.
Nope. We'll see. Not as exciting as last week, but still some stuff to talk about. Maybe I'll find a reason. I gotta find some other players you hate and find a reason to bring them up next week.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Thank you for offering. No, that's kind of you, but no. Okay, on that note, we'll see everybody next week, and thanks for watching.